And then we decided that it's important that we have an appreciation of what it will take for us to get the economy going. So if you were to do a longitudinal analysis, just trying to understand what has been the contribution of various sectors of the economy to GDP over a period of time, one of the things that is going to stand out is the contraction of mining, which is part of primary production, to the share of the GDP. And if you are to look at the skills profile in our country, is such that a lot of people don't have the kind of skills that allows them to participate in the secondary and tertiary sectors of the economy. And therefore, your primary sector is still an area of opportunity for the multitudes of people who are out of employment. And that's why we had to do everything possible to ensure that there are significant investment in the primary sector so that we're able to absorb people into gainful employment.
That was South Africa's Minister of Electricity, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, taking us to exactly 17 minutes after 4 p.m.
The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Interracial relationships. And now you are based in the States and you are married to a beautiful white woman, white lady.
I learned that, for us in our culture, our mind. I remember when we had started dating and whatnot, and she picked up like a little bit of weight, and maybe me, I was like, oh wow, you must be happy in this relationship because look at you, you look great, you're even picking up some weight. And she got really, really offended, and it took like I think it was about a couple of hours before I could realize that, because I could tell that she was off after that, and it took me a while to figure out like what it was, until later when I was talking to her, I'm like, you're really, really off today. And then she expressed that, yeah, because you're telling me that I'm picking up some weight, and I'm like, in my culture, when you are gaining some weight, it means you're happy. Yes. So that's what I was trying to imply.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Tamengubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
Let's take a look now at the World Bank's Macro Poverty Outlook 2025, which has shown that Botswana may breach its debt ceiling unless fiscal deficits are reduced. The government of Botswana recently acquired 2 loans from the African Development Bank and the Botswana Public Officers Pension Fund, amounting to $532 million. The Southern African country's economy contracted by 3% in 2024, and this was largely due to the diamond market downturn. For more on this, we're joined on the line by independent economist Tshepo Kgadima. A very good afternoon to you, Tshepo. Good to have you once again on Africa in Business.
Greetings to you as well as to the listeners of Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
So perhaps let's start off with an understanding, Tshepo, of how dire the situation really is in Botswana. How bad is the country's debt level?
Well, one has to take into account that for a long time, for decades, Botswana took pride in the fact that it was not a debtor nation. It had not followed suit to African countries that all en masse were dependent on both the IMF as well as the World Bank in terms of loans that they could not repay, and more so the neighbors of Botswana. So Botswana for some time appeared to be a shining example of what good governance the result would be. However, in the last 5 years, there's been a worrying trend whereby we've seen that Botswana started tapping into the capital markets, but they did not really tap into what I would say, or what I would term responsible capital. I think the history of the World Bank and of the IMF is well known, because those so-called Bretton Woods institutions, when they were founded, they were never for the economic development and advancement of what is now known as the emerging economies. They were created post-World War II to address the problem of the devastation of war and rebuild Europe. And over the years, we've seen these institutions themselves now being hijacked, whereby they've become geopolitical tools to influence policy in various countries and the so-called emerging economies. And as a result, they do not have, either the World Bank or the IMF do not have a track record of success of any single country post-World War II for the mandate they were created for, of success, of having done anything. So therefore the question arises as to why Botswana exactly has followed suit. But one can understand that it was the erstwhile long-term government or ruling party of Botswana. Now you have the umbrella for democratic change under President Boko. And they, in my book, violated what I call the Professor Michael Watkins rule, which is the first 90 days, that the new government of Botswana, which is not so new anymore, in the first 90 days, they failed to define the macroeconomic policy trajectory for Botswana and to de-risk the country from being 90% dependent on a cyclical commodity, commodity, which is diamonds. And they failed to come up with a strategy that economically would diversify the economy of Botswana. And if anything, they are continuing to now go and borrow more money, particularly from the so-called development finance institutions, whether it's the African Development Bank or the World Bank, only points that things are going to look a lot more bleaker, because these institutions tend to restrict the borrowers, such as the country of Botswana. And one is surprised as to why Botswana did not tap into the private capital through the bond market largely, because that would have given them some latitude in terms of how to diversify the economy. So right now I can't see them being able to diversify the economy.
And on that very point, Tsepo, why has it proven difficult for Botswana to raise funding in the local market?
Well, the economy, on its own, is very a small economy, largely dependent, as we say, on diamond export. But also, one has to bear in mind that the relationship that Botswana government has with DBS has been skewed against the interest of Botswana as an economy. So they have not benefited to the full extent that would be demonstrable of the richness of the resource in terms of the gem diamonds in that country. And therefore, you do not have local banks or even pension funds that ordinarily would be the participators in any bond issuance that the government would embark on. And the other problem that I see with Botswana, as is the case with South Africa as well, by the way, is the embracing of the failed from misapplication, the policy of deficit financing. Because those that try to apply the policy of deficit financing today have completely misunderstood and misapplied the original intent of the framer and the inventor of the policy of deficit financing, the famous English economist, John Maynard Keynes. And that can only mean one thing and one thing only, that we'll see the Botswana becoming a more indebted nation. I think right now they are sitting at a debt to GDP ratio below 40%. But the trajectory points to whereby in the next 3 to 5 years, probably Botswana will be in the same place where South Africa is now, whereby the debt to GDP ratio is well above 80%. And that in turn, it will manifest in a very pedestrian GDP growth, and therefore unemployment is going to rise for Botswana, because this has happened in South Africa. We applied the theory of deficit financing. And by that I mean, South Africa, for example, in the year 2000 and must have been 2011, thereabout, they made this bold announcement that we have paid off all our foreign debt. But notwithstanding that, actually, no, 2001, in fact, 2001, we said we've paid off all our foreign debt and we are now, free. Except we took loans, which were short-term loans, through 10-year bonds. And once those bonds now matured and needed to be redeemed, we did not have the revenue. Botswana is in exactly the same situation. They've taken on debt that they've been taking over the last 5 years. And in a short order of time, when that debt matures and it has to be redeemed, they will not have the revenues to be able, they will not have generated sufficient tax revenues or royalties from their diamond sales
to be able to service that debt.
Therefore, they are going to have to refinance. And when they refinance, then it becomes a snowball effect.
I wonder though, Tshepo, this $532 million of loans that Botswana has taken out, what is that money going to be used for? Is it going to service debt, or is it going to go into development? Is that not key, though, to determine whether or not they will be able to repay that debt when the time comes?
Well, from their own pronouncements, the debt or the loans that they have taken on in the last 5 years, including the recent ones, I think the most recent one of $304 million was also from the African Development Bank, and there were other loans from the World Bank. All that portfolio of loans that they have taken have not gone into the productive sectors of the economy, but have gone into social spending and social infrastructure, which in itself never has. In fact, it has a neutral multiplier effect on the economy. So they are not investing in productive sectors of the economy. They are not investing in those industries that would seek to diversify the economy and de-risk it from being a single commodity dependent economy in terms of diamonds, which already I think there was an announcement earlier that they are actually going to have 1,000 employees from their diamond mines from Orapa and Jwaneng, who they have to shut down those diamond mines for, I think, a period of 3 months, because the prices are so bad, the cost of production has gone up so much higher. So therefore, that also is going to mean that the revenues are not going to materialize in terms of royalties. And therefore, the loans that they are taking on, it means it goes towards financing. Hence, I'm talking about the budget deficit.
Yes.
So fiscal intervention and not necessarily an industrial policy intervention.
Right. In 30 seconds, if we may, Tshepo, you did mention the fact that the new government, or the not-so-new government, has missed that 90 days of defining the macroeconomic policy and de-risking the country. Apart from diamonds, what are the other sectors that you believe the country's economic policy needs to be gravitating towards in order to make up for the downturn in diamonds?
Agriculture, and particularly in terms of livestock, they should be taking advantage of the growing market in the Middle East, and as well as their traditional markets of Europe. And also they need to forgo the policy of low volume, therefore low impact tourism footprint, because not anybody can afford the tourism product of Botswana, because largely it has been that of low volume, meaning fewer visitors, therefore the prices have been higher. And Botswana has lost out on being an attractive tourist destination, and that's one of the things that they should do, because that is the services, the hospitality industry, that would reduce the unemployment and also diversify the economy, and also have a direct effect on the diversification into agriculture. And beyond just livestock, they should also look into crops, because the country is not arid in its entirety. And there are a number of things that could be done today to ensure that they become a thriving agribusiness or agri-industry.
Tepo Khadima, thank you once again for your insight, a really comprehensive one at the look of Botswana's financial situation now, as well as providing other alternatives as to how they can better de-risk the country. We thank you very much this afternoon.
Great pleasure. Thank you.
That's independent economist Tepo Khadima, who takes us to exactly 4:30 Central African time. Let's head over now to the markets desk, where Chanduko Ligege is standing by with your latest market indicators.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, Tammy. Good afternoon. These are your financial indicators. $1 is trading at 17 Rand 72 in South Africa. In Botswana, 13 Pula 23. Namibia, 70 Namibian dollars 72. Zambia, 24 Kwacha to 76 to the US dollar. Kenya, the dollar is at 128 shilling 41. Ethiopia, 135 big 432. Uganda, 3,000 shilling 602. Tanzania, 2,000 shilling 643. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 559. Egypt, the dollar is at 49 Egyptian pound 54. Tunisia, 2 dinar 94. Algeria, 130 dinar 814. In Morocco, the dollar will cost you 90 ram 13. Looking at Angola, 912 Kwanza 961. Congolese franc at 2,854 to the US dollar. Commodities, gold is at $3,344, platinum at $1,222, while the price of Brent crude oil is $76.25 a barrel. That is all for now.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
And standing by with the business of sport, a very good afternoon to you, Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you so much, Tammy. A very good afternoon from the sports desk. Now, the FIFA Club World Cup hosted in the USA has seen thousands of ticket prices reduced due to a lack of demand. So the 32-team tournament that is set to unfold in 12 venues across the USA offers a rare chance to witness some of the biggest clubs in the world in action. So clubs like Real Madrid, as well as the Argentinian club Boca Juniors, are offering tickets starting at $130 per game. In a match that was expected to draw attention, Lionel Messi's Inter Miami will kick off the tournament against the Egyptian side Al Ahly in Miami on the 14th of June after lack of ticket sales. And to make this game even more enticing, FIFA has slashed ticket prices from $230 to just $55. Now, FIFA President Gianni Infantino has stated that he's not too concerned about the ticket prices for this tournament. He also noted that fans from over 130 countries have purchased tickets. The situation, though, will be interesting to observe, especially following President Donald Trump's recent travel ban, which nearly affects nearly 20 countries. Well, Manchester City have signed Wolves left back Ryan Ait-Nouri for $41 million. The 24-year-old Algerian defender has signed a contract until 2030 and is available for the group stages of the FIFA Club World Cup. Now, City begin their campaign in the newly expanded tournament against Morocco, Wydad Casablanca, on the 18th of June. Algerian international Ait-Nouri joined Wolves in a $14.9 million deal from Angers back in 2021, having spent the previous season on loan at Molineux and made 41 appearances in all competitions last term as the club avoided relegation, scoring 5 goals and adding 7 assists. He is Wolves' second high-profile departure of the European summer, with Manchester United having already agreed to sign Brazil striker Matheus Cunha for $75.5 million. While staying with transfer news, Jobe Bellingham has joined Borussia Dortmund from Sunderland on a 5-year contract until June of 2030. Now, Sunderland say the fee is a club record, believed to be around $50 million plus $10 million in add-ons. The 19-year-old midfielder has played for the Black Cats since 2023, making about 90 appearances, and also helped them secure promotion to the Premier League last season. Well, Manchester City women started in 1988 and was one of the first women's Super League teams to go fully professional in 2014. Since then, women's football has grown rapidly in popularity, visibility as well as commercial appeal. According to the managing director Charlotte O'Neill, as well as the head of commercial partnerships Anna Mabel Nag, Manchester City women is building a sustainable success, independence as a part of the big brand of Manchester City. She also talks about just how Manchester City Football Group has shown its seriousness about women's football.
I think the fact that City Football Group wants Man City men's and Man City women's tells you they're serious about women's football. So I think if they weren't committed to invest in what we need to be successful, then maybe you'd say that was worse. But I think I genuinely believe we're better in the group and the two teams being aligned.
And finally, Carlos Alcaraz could lose a large portion of his $2.8 million French Open prize money due to French taxation laws. Now, tennis stars pay tax in the country in which they earned their money. They do not need to pay further income tax when they return to their respective homelands. Now, that means Alcaraz, as well as every other player who competed in the French Open, will pay their tax in France. The 22-year-old will therefore pay the local tax rate of around 30%. And with that, it's a wrap from the sports desk at Dosawa. There'll be more sporting updates tomorrow morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Ngobeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
And do keep us abreast on developments in your neck of the woods. Are there any stories that you believe would be of interest to our listeners, both on the African continent and in the diaspora? This can be in the field of the business of sport or business itself. Send us your stories to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Also, feel free to comment on the various stories that we are bringing to you throughout the course of today. You'll find us on X at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa, and on Instagram at Channel Africa 1. Do remember as well that if you've got access to YouTube, you can live stream us there as well. Here's an update on a story that we've been carrying for you over the past few days. This is around Afrique Bank and its downgrading by Fitch. You'll remember that it was downgraded to BBB-, which is just one notch above junk status. I'm going to read just part of the press release in response to this downgrade, the statement issued by the African Export-Import Bank, Afrique Bank. It reads as follows. It is important to note that Fitch acknowledges Afrique Bank's financial resilience, highlighting that the bank operates with a high level of collateral and credit risk mitigants and has already taken relatively large provisions on some sovereign exposures, which would reduce any potential further negative financial impact for the bank. It goes on to say that Fitch's negative outlook decision, which it says reflects the risk that the debt owed to Afrique Bank by some of its sovereign borrowers may be restructured, is hinged on the erroneous view in some quarters that the treaty establishing Afrique Bank, executed by its 53 participating African states, can be violated by the bank without consequences. For clarity, the bank established agreement is a treaty entered into by and among all participating states and between the participating states and the bank. Accordingly, Afrique Bank would like to reaffirm that it is not participating in debt restructuring negotiations related to any of its member countries. To do so would be inconsistent with the Bank Establishment Treaty. The treaty of its loans and other activities is governed by the treaty and not by classifications created outside of its framework. It concludes, Afrique Bank's final resilience, robust governance and unwavering commitment to excellence and to Africa are critical to the delivery of its mandate. The bank remains committed to supporting its member countries in navigating their economic challenges while promoting trade-led growth, economic development, and general macroeconomic stability. Those are just excerpts from the statement issued by the African Export-Import Development Bank. You will be able to find the entire statement on the various social media platforms, but also perhaps more importantly on the Afrixim Bank sites. That brings us to exactly 4:41.
Africa in business. Africa in business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Tamen Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
The inaugural policy dialogue on entrepreneurship education kicked off in Boksburg in Johannesburg, South Africa this week. The high-level dialogue aims to ignite a cross-sector conversation on embedding entrepreneurship education into the basic education system. It brought together key stakeholders from national and provincial government departments, the private sector, civil society, and academic institutions to co-create a unified vision for entrepreneurship as a key lever for youth empowerment. More from Elijah Mhlanga, Head of Communication at the Department of Basic Education.
This dialogue is very important because we need to now focus as a country on entrepreneurship, not just learners who are going to be employees. We need now to say what is it that we need to do to make sure that we equip our young people for the future world of work. In fact, not so much even in the future, because AI is here. When we started this EQUIP thing, education, employability and entrepreneurship, AI was not there in the way that it has now taken over. It shows how fast the world is changing and that we need to do all that we can to make sure that our young children are equipped with the skills that they need for them to be able to either get good employment or for them to be able to create employment and become entrepreneurs. So we are here with our partners because this is not something that the department on its own can do. You need the business sector to come on board to say, this is what we want from you as the education sector. Give our young people the experience and the skills that they can meet our needs. And what we say are our needs are actually the needs of the country. So that collaboration is absolutely critical. That's why we said, let's get together, all our partners that are involved on these matters, let's talk and find a way to develop policy that will ensure that the country goes on a different trajectory, one that is going to focus on entrepreneurship, not just for people to be employed.
And why entrepreneurship? Why was that important for the department to solely focus on that?
Well, for the most part, when the country's economy is not doing well, education gets the blame because they say you are educating and producing learners who are not equipped. They cannot cope with the needs of industry. So we said, what does industry need? And then we started collaborating. The curriculum that we've now done with the new subjects that we've introduced in school is informed by what industry said will be required. So we are now responding directly to the needs of industry. That's why if you look at the subjects that we have, they are more focused on equipping young people with skills. You've got science, you've got automotive engineering, you've got civil technology, you've got construction, you've got engineering, graphic design. All of those things that industry said this is what is required for the country's development. But this is your role as education, to make sure that you avail this as early as possible in school. So all these initiatives that we are putting in place in terms of policy changes, strengthening ECD, strengthening grade R, making sure that the foundation phase is also strong in terms of the recruitment of good quality teachers, we are doing to prepare our young people for the later grades where they begin to make choices about what they need. So when they get there, they need to be comfortable with any career that they can find, whether you want to do the sciences, whether you want to do the economics, but you need to have done maths, you need to be strong in it, you need to have done some science, you need to have actually taken subjects that will direct you to a career of your choice.
That was Elijah Mhlanga, the Head of Communication at the Department of Basic Education in South Africa. He was speaking to Nhlanhla Mahlangu. Takes us to exactly 4:46 Central African Time.
Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective. Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Now, as South Africa commemorates Youth Month under the theme Skills for a Changing World, Empowering Youth for Meaningful Economic Participation, President Cyril Ramaphosa engaged with youth beneficiaries of the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention and Presidential Employment Stimulus flagship programs in Pretoria. Let's listen in to what he had to say to them.
We are so delighted to have you as our teacher assistants. You are assisting in our schools, a very, very important area of our nation's life, education. You are the ones who are going to be preparing these young people for the future of our country that we all desire. I'm delighted that it is through you, young people, that we are doing this. Yes, I know that your own situation is not the most ideal. We are working very hard to create more permanent positions for you in many, many ways in the economy. But when government is dealing with these problems, it also initiates programs like this one. We have up to now brought in almost 2 million of you as young people into this type of program. We are delighted that we are a government that is trying everything. The economy is not working as well as we want, but on the government side, I am proud to be working with ministers and deputy ministers and in our departments who have taken this whole process of creating job opportunities very seriously. We are deploying quite a lot of money, billions of rands, to enable this initiative to get underway. So getting more than 200,000, and Deputy Minister here, Mhlauli, tells me that it's 255,000 young people that we have brought in, not only in schools, but in other areas as well, a part of the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative. So you are part of the many that we are deploying around the country to do good work. So I want to applaud you. What you are doing is so important for our country, for the future of the children that you are looking after here. And let me say, I am so impressed that one, you've become so well educated yourselves. You've gained very valuable skills that you are now displaying to other young children. And many of you are also beneficiaries of the education support that our government has given throughout your young life as you've grown with the child grants and all that, and in your schools, no fee paying schools and NSFAS. So we devote a lot of money and effort on education, and you are the products of that. We now need to take you to the next level, and we will work very hard to take you to the next level where you will get more permanent jobs, more livelihood, better livelihoods, so that you can support your own families, so that as you also have children, your own children can go to a much higher level.
That was the voice of South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa. He was speaking there to young people who are beneficiaries of the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention as well as the Presidential Employment Stimulus flagship programs. That takes us to exactly 10 minutes to 5 p.m.
The EU-African SME Summit. Join more than 200 change makers from June 19 to June 21 at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. It's where trade meets transformation. We are building Africa's future through AFC. FTA, the EU's global gateway and the power of small businesses.
It's an opportunity to spark collaboration and unlock Africa's investment.
Presented by the European Entrepreneurs, the Pan-African Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and
Shared Value Africa. This is a summit not to be missed.
Register now at euafricasmesummit.eu. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From markets to innovation. From markets to innovation. Africa in Business with Tami Ngubeni covers it all. With Africa's future in focus. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Now, the South African Reserve Bank is currently working to determine the risk of climate change on the financial sector. Speaking in Stellenbosch, South Africa last week, the Deputy Governor Vuesd Afrique said central banks don't know enough about long-term costs of climate change. Now, in South Africa, the SRB has conducted stress tests on the banking sector and will be moving towards insurance to assess the risks that might better inform decisions on monetary policy. Dimakatso Leshuro has those details.
Climate change adaptation is estimated to cost sub-Saharan African economies between $30 and $50 billion annually over the next decade. This is between 2 to 3% of GDP for the region as it seeks to deal with the effects of climate-related events like drought and floods. Climate-related events are inflationary and driving up insurance claims. Deputy Governor at the South African Reserve Bank and CEO of the bank's Prudential Authority, Vuesd Afrique, says common stress tests would allow all banks and insurance companies to outline scenarios on how they would respond to financial stress brought on by climate change.
This year we put out our first common stress test where we allow all of the banks to tell us how would they respond to a climate stress test. We're going to progress that to go to the insurance sector. So we're trying to anticipate the risks as they might come. The third intervention has been to give guidance to financial institutions because this is a new body of work. So the JSE has got a set of requirements in terms of how they would like South African companies to report on their own initiative. We are looking at the risk exposures. Now, the risk exposures do not sit in the financial institutions themselves. They are the risk exposures of their clients, which affect the credit that these financial institutions extend, which affect the types of claims that they might receive on the insurance side.
She said the cost of floods in 2022 in the KwaZulu-Natal province rose to $3 billion, while severe droughts increased food prices as much as 10 percentage points, increasing overall inflation by 3 percentage points. Up to 60% of the country's banks' loan books had credit risk exposure to borrowers with climate-related risks.
What is different about climate-related risks is that they can be multifaceted. They can have an impact on inflation, they can have an impact on credit risk exposures, they can have an impact on insurance claims, they can have an impact on things like tourism numbers. We saw that in Cape Town when you had the drought. So when we start to look at economic costs, you will have a layer of economic costs that comes to the inflation numbers, you will have a set of issues that have got financial stability impact. So it's not an economic shock like a financial shock.
She added that climate change denialism would lead to unpreparedness in mitigation and adaptation strategies and would have snowballing effects on government expenditure and economic growth.
You will see in the climate scenarios we talk about orderly management of risks and disorderly, because that's where your worst case scenario looks like, is if things are disorderly, if we are all denialists and we say, well, there's no climate change, and therefore I don't have to do anything. And so there are no mitigants in place, and we don't have strategies for adaptation, Meaning, when the risk arises, we're all scrambling and we say, oh, this is what has happened. We saw in South Africa how those types of risks could materialize, because when we had the floods in KZN, we had a number of things that were there. Okay, the insurers could manage their piece because nothing broke the bank. But we realized when we had to look at actual funding mechanism. So there was a bridge here today, but there's no bridge tomorrow. Let's assume that a municipality is responsible for fixing the bridge. The municipality looks, we don't have money. Okay, fine. So we go to the next layer. We go to the province. Is the money? The province says, oh, even we don't have space. Then national government has to step in. We were very lucky because national government has got provisions that they could utilize. But this was just a small part of one province. Imagine now if this is happening across the country in multiple ways, would we be able to manage? So it does give us things to reflect on. Then the disorderly scenario then comes with extra layers of other economic costs, because what happens is that the opportunity costs will become larger. Things that you were supposed to do, because you now have this situation that is urgent, you get this displacement.
Chazibana.
That is the South African Reserve Bank's Deputy Governor, Fundi Chazibana. Bring us to exactly 4:57 Central African time. That's how we come to the end of Africa in Business for this afternoon. Thank you so much to our entire team, our producer, Mabo Boloka, as well as our technical team, our technical producer, Ndando Lutuli, and on social media, Nzako Mashaba. From myself, Tami Ngubeni, and the team, we hand the reins over now to the French desk with the French news coming up at the top of the hour.